The wind in the Yemeni desert, it doesn't just blow, it scours.
Yeah, it really does.
At twilight, the landscape turns into this monochromatic expanse of gray and deep blue. And the silence is heavy. It's physical.
It's the kind of silence where you can actually hear your own blood rushing in your ears.
Right. It forces you to look inward, which is exactly why Dawoud Muhammad Farhan was out there.
Dawoud was a man who sought solitude. He was comfortable in the emptiness, or well, at least he thought he was.
Exactly. On this particular evening, the isolation was about to be broken by something that completely defies biological explanation.
He's walking along a ridge miles from the nearest village.
And he sees a silhouette. It's a black goat tied to a lone, gnarled tree.
Now, in a nomadic region, a stray animal isn't impossible, but it is highly unusual to find one tied up and just abandoned so far from a water source.
It's an anomaly. And human curiosity is a dangerous thing. Dawoud assumes a farmer has lost it, or maybe he left it temporarily. So he waits.
The sun dips lower, the shadows stretch out, and no one comes.
Finally, he decides to intervene. He picks up a stick, intending to either untie it or shoot away if it gets aggressive. He steps closer.
The goat turns its head.
It looks him dead in the eye. And then it opens its mouth.
And this is where the story pivots from a desert travelogue to straight-up horror.
The goat speaks. And I don't mean it made a sound that vaguely resembled a word. It spoke with the clear, articulate voice of a young woman.
It said, "I am not a goat."
It revealed itself as a member of a Jinn clan.
And here is the reaction that tells us everything we need to know about our protagonist. Dawoud didn't run. He didn't collapse in terror.
He listened.
Because Dawoud hadn't just stumbled onto this entity. He had been groomed for this meeting since he was in the cradle.
We really need to back up and look at that grooming because it's not your typical predator narrative. Usually we think of external threats. But for Dawoud, the threat was his own heritage.
Exactly. Today's deep dive is an autopsy of a spiritual criminal. We are profiling a man who became one of the most notorious sorcerers in his region, but he didn't start with a choice.
No, he started as a project.
His father was a sorcerer. His grandfather was a sorcerer. This was the family trade passed down like a genetic defect.
The sources mention his father casting spells on him when he was just a toddler. That seems so incredibly counterintuitive to me. A parent's biological imperative is to protect their offspring. Why would a father deliberately weaken his own child's spiritual defenses?
To create a vessel. The father viewed Dawoud not as a son, but as an heir to the darkness.
Wow.
He cast specific talismans to invite possession to make the boy's spirit porous. He wanted the Jinn to take notice.
And they did.
When Dawoud started having seizures and night terrors as a child, screaming and convulsing without any medical cause, his father wasn't concerned. He was proud.
That is a chilling reframing of parental pride. To him, the seizures were a metric of success.
Precisely. It meant the connection was establishing itself. His mother tried to fight it. She desperately wanted him to have a normal life, but she was up against generations of occult momentum.
Right. And by the time Dawoud hit his teenage years, the fear had been replaced by seduction.
He stopped running from the shadows and started seeking them out. He'd go into the desert, and these entities would appear to him as beautiful women.
It's the classic honey trap.
It's deep psychological conditioning. If you break a child with fear and then offer them comfort in the very source of that fear, you create a dependency that is almost impossible to break.
So when that goat speaks to him in the desert, he's ready. He accepts the invitation.
He does.
But the immediate aftermath wasn't power. It was total degradation. This is part of the timeline that really confuses me. He accepts the deal, effectively, and then he goes home and completely loses his mind.
It was a psychotic break induced by full possession. He returns to his village, but the Dawoud they knew is gone.
He's semi-conscious, violent.
Unpredictable.
His family, specifically his mother, has to chain him up with heavy irons inside the house just to keep him from hurting himself or others.
And when they did let him out, usually at night, he wasn't acting human. The descriptions are grotesque.
He's scavenging, eating raw meat, filth, garbage right off the ground. There's a detail here about him fighting stray dogs for carrion.
It's repulsive, but we have to look at the why behind it. To an outsider, this just looks like insanity, but within the internal logic of this dark world, it's a strict ritual.
How so?
Inversion is the key to black magic. To gain power from lower-level entities, you must debase yourself. You have to violate the natural order. By acting like a feral animal, by consuming filth, Dawoud believed he was unlocking spiritual gifts.
So he viewed eating garbage not as rock bottom, but as a rite of passage.
Correct. He thought he was paying his dues. But here is the problem for the entities. A feral man fighting dogs is completely useless for business.
Right.
You can't build an empire if you're covered in filth. So once his spirit was sufficiently broken, the cleaning up phase began.
This is the transition that turns him from a victim into a predator. He travels to another province, meets a sheikh, an elder sorcerer, and gets what essentially amounts to a graduate degree in deception.
The feral phase broke him down, but the mentorship phase built him into a weapon. The sheikh validated his experiences and gave him the tools to actually monetize them.
Let's talk about those tools, because this is where the magic really meets the con. He wasn't just improvising in a back room. He was using a proven system.
He was.
The sources mention a prohibited book called Shams al-Marif, or the Sun of Knowledge.
That book is infamous in the region. It's not just a textbook. In these circles, it's treated like a radioactive manual, contains grids and numerology and the specific names of Jinn kings.
It turns the chaotic act of summoning into a dark pseudoscience.
Exactly. Dawoud wasn't just mumbling random words. He was following a very old, very dangerous algorithm.
But he also understood human psychology better than most modern marketers. The detail about the oud oil really stood out to me. He had a rare stone ring and a rosary, and he was explicitly instructed to douse them in the most expensive oud oil available.
That's pure neuroscience at work.
Yeah, because the olfactory bulb, the part of your brain that processes smell, is directly connected to the amygdala and hippocampus, which handle emotion and memory.
Right. And in his culture, the smell of high-quality oud is deeply associated with piety, with mosques, with the divine.
Scent walks in, smells that heavy, expensive scent, and their brain subconsciously signals, this is a holy place, I am safe here.
It completely bypasses their critical thinking. It masks the reality that he's actually performing dark rituals right in front of them. It's a sensory illusion designed to lower their defenses before he even speaks a single word.
And once those defenses are down, he hits them with the intel. This is the part that makes skeptics pause.
Oh, yeah.
The client sits down, and Dawoud instantly knows their name, their mother's name, and the secret sin they committed 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
How is he doing that? Is this just cold reading?
It's not cold reading at all. A cold reader guesses probabilities. They say something like, I sense you're having money trouble, which applies to almost everyone.
Right.
Dawoud was highly specific. He used what we might call supernatural insider trading.
How does that work technically within this belief system?
In Islamic theology, and this is the exact mechanic Dawoud exploited, every human has a Qur'an.
A Qur'an.
Think of the Qur'an as a constant spiritual companion, a double from the unseen world that stays with you from birth to death. It knows everything you know. It sees everything you do.
It's basically a black box recorder for your entire life.
Exactly. So when a victim walked into Dawoud's room, Dawoud didn't magically read their mind. His servant entities simply interrogated the victim's Qur'an.
Wow.
The Qur'an gave up the data. It would say, this is Ahmed. He stole gold from his sister in 1998. Dawoud's servant whispers it to him, and Dawoud says it out loud.
That is terrifyingly efficient. The client hears their deepest, darkest secret and assumes it's a miracle from God.
When in reality, it's the ultimate privacy breach. But it works. The client submits totally. Dawoud had them hook, line, and sinker.
And this is the trap of ambition. It wasn't enough for him?
It never is.
5 years into his practice, he felt his current entities were too weak. He wanted more money, more prestige. So he demands an upgrade.
And he gets a visitor during one of his isolation periods, a figure in white.
An old man dressed in white but radiating absolute terror. He offers Dawoud an army of powerful servants.
But the price of admission into this upper echelon is what they call the ultimate taboo.
The 40-day ritual.
Yeah.
The conditions for this are, well, they are nauseating, but they're also very specific.
He had to remain in a state of janaba for 40 days.
Janaba being major ritual impurity.
Yes. In Islam, physical and spiritual cleanliness is the absolute prerequisite for connecting with the divine. By deliberately staying filthy, refusing to bathe, refusing water, Dawoud was effectively building a firewall against God.
He was turning his body into a vessel that only dark things would want to inhabit.
And it culminates in the desecration of the Quran.
This part is so grim. He had to tear the pages, tape them to the soles of his feet, and walk into the bathroom.
He had to physically soil the holy text. This isn't just disrespect. It's a formal declaration of war.
Why do they require something so extreme?
Because they need you to burn the bridge back to righteousness so thoroughly that you feel you can never, ever return. They want you totally isolated in your guilt.
The dark irony is, while he's doing this, literally walking around with scripture taped to his feet, he's still performing as a pious healer. He's going to the mosque. He's pretending to pray alongside everyone else.
He's mocking the prayer while standing right there in the line. And in his healing sessions, he'd mumble softly. The clients thought he was reciting holy verses.
But he wasn't?
No. In reality, he was chanting the names of demons. He was binding his clients to these entities through blood sacrifice.
Right, telling them to slaughter a black rooster or a goat for healing.
When it was actually an offering to the jinn.
So the client thinks they're getting a cure, but they're actually participating in shirk, polytheism. He's dragging them down with him into the dark.
It's a pyramid scheme of spiritual destruction. And for a while, Dawoud felt like a king. He had the money, the fear, the reputation.
But the human soul isn't designed to withstand that kind of pressure forever. The cracks eventually started to show.
They showed up in his sleep.
Let's talk about the warning shots. He's exhausted one day, and he falls asleep at a client's house during a session, and he has a vision.
It's a horrific simulation of his own death. He sees his own corpse. He's hovering there, watching the washers prepare his body.
He's screaming, "I'm alive, I'm right here."
But the barrier between the living and the dead is sealed. He feels the suffocating darkness of the grave closing in on him.
And then a massive hand grabs him.
A giant hand smashes his spirit back into his body, and a voice demands that he pray to God. He wakes up screaming in actual physical pain.
But his handlers, the genie, they're excellent gaslighters.
They are. They tell him, "Oh, you just annoyed us because you fell asleep on the job. Stop complaining and get back to work."
And he buys it for a moment.
Yeah.
But the second dream he couldn't explain away.
In this one, he's walking toward a deep pit, and at the bottom is his father, the man who started it all, the man who was so proud of the childhood possession.
And his father isn't ruling a dark kingdom down there.
No, his father is in unimaginable torment. He looks up at Dawoud with total desperation and says, "Stop. This path leads only to ruin and regret. I wish I could return to life just to repent."
That's the circuit breaker for Dawoud. The architect of his misery is admitting from beyond the grave that the blueprint was a lie.
Dawoud wakes up with total clarity, and he makes a decision right then and there. He decides to get out.
And this is where the story diverges from a fairy tale. In stories, when the hero repents, the sun comes out and music swells.
But in Dawoud's reality, when he repented, the war began.
He starts to pray, sincerely for the first time. And the backlash from the unseen world is immediate.
First, the power vanishes. The intel stops. The entities strip him of the vitality they were lending him. He becomes physically weak, unable to even walk. He's bedridden.
But he persists. He keeps praying.
So the entities escalate. They deliver a direct threat. "Return to us or we destroy what you love."
And Dawoud, broken and weak, still refuses.
The cost of that refusal is really hard to even talk about.
It began with his children.
They were just at home. And in a single sitting, seemingly out of nowhere, their bodies began to swell up.
It wasn't a slow progression of an illness.
No, it was a rapid, impossible physiological reaction. Dawoud is watching this completely helpless.
Because he knows exactly what's causing it.
He knows it's not a virus, it's an assassination. 2 of his children die, just like that.
And he still doesn't break.
No, he holds his ground. Then his wife falls ill. She contracts this strange, incurable sickness that just wastes her away.
And she dies too.
Dawoud is left in the wreckage of his entire life. His house is empty. His body is broken. He is completely alone.
I think most people would have surrendered after the first child got sick. They would have done anything to make it stop. Why did he keep going?
That is the raw nature of true repentance. Dawoud realized a terrifying truth. The death of his family, as infinitely tragic as it is temporary, but the death of the soul is eternal.
He viewed this immense loss as the invoice finally coming due for decades of crimes against the spirit.
He accepted the consequences. He decided that saving his soul was worth losing his entire world.
And he dedicated the rest of his life to exposing the tradecraft. That's why we know about the Dawoud oil, the fake Quran reading.
He broke the occult code of silence to warn others, to tell them that the holy healer they're visiting might actually be a predator in disguise.
It's such a heavy story. It really forces you to look at the idea of shortcuts differently. Dawoud wanted power. He wanted knowledge. And he got it. but the interest rate on that loan was everything he ever loved.
It completely deconstructs the glamorous image of the mystic. We see sorcery in movies as this cool, edgy power.
Right.
But Dawood's reality was eating garbage, desecrating his own faith, and burying his children. It wasn't power at all, it was slavery.
He was never the master. He was just the host.
A disposable vessel, and once he stopped being useful to them, they tried to discard him.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what is the core takeaway here? Beyond the obvious, don't summon demons in the desert, which I think we can all agree on.
The real lesson is about the unseen cost of ambition when it's divorced from morality, whether it's spiritual shortcuts or ethical shortcuts in business or life. When you try to violently bypass the natural order to get what you want, you are opening a door.
And Dawood's life is a brutal testament to the fact that you don't always know what's standing on the other side of that door waiting to come in.
Dawoud Muhammad Farhan walked out of that darkness, but he certainly didn't walk out whole. He left the door ajar just enough for us to see the absolute horror inside.
And hopefully that glimpse is enough to keep the rest of us on the safe path. A final provocative thought to leave you with: when you seek a shortcut to power or hidden knowledge, do you really know who or what is answering the call?
A terrifying question.
A reminder that if you stare into the abyss, sometimes the abyss stares back. And sometimes it speaks. Until next time, keep your eyes open.